there. My name's Allison. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Jessica. How are you doing?
Jessica, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. So what brings you to therapy today?
Well, a couple reasons. The main reason I'm here is I'm just feeling kind of overwhelmed. I have a 14-year-old son, and he's going into high school this year. He's on the spectrum. He's diagnosed with Asperger's. And I have a younger daughter, and everything's pretty normal. My husband's really supportive. I'm just having a lot of issues right now with Ryan, and I'm feeling like I'm maybe not making the best decisions, or maybe I don't know. I can't really.
Okay, so I'm hearing you saying that you're feeling like you're not making the best decisions. Was there an event that triggered you to feel that way?
Well, it's hard. I mean, being a parent of a child with special needs, I mean, I've fought for him the whole way. I mean, he got diagnosed when he was about 8, which is a little later than some kids. I've always known, there was stuff going on, and when he started going to school, that's when we started noticing the problems, and I fought and fought and fought for an IEP. And, I've kind of tried to do everything I can to be a good mom, and, sometimes I feel judgment from other people. I'm in a support group. And,
that's great, by the way.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a few years. Lately it started to get more stressful than good. I think everyone's different as a parent, and a lot of the moms there, I have a couple close friends in the group who have kind of been able to bond, but lately kind of the group makeup has changed a little bit, and there's somebody in the group who just says some really shitty stuff, just judgmental. And my mother-in-law, I guess that's really the biggest thing that brought me in here. I'm just feeling the stress from other people's judgments of my parenting and my choices. And I can kind of maybe shove it off a little easier when it's people in a group. But my mother-in-law recently, we had, I don't want to say a falling out. She's a part of my life no matter what, whether I want that or not. I've always been pretty open about my life, and open about our struggles with Ryan. And recently we were over at her house for a holiday, and Ryan had a tantrum, and was doing his stimming, and I was trying to calm him down, and he has a little sensory blanket he uses, and he has some coping skills, and generally he's pretty good at using them, but my mother-in-law just looked really upset and kind of put off, and I just kind of let it get to me for a while, and on the way, but I didn't really say anything. She was saying things to him like, why don't you just kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, kind of implying to him he didn't even understand what she's meaning, you know what I mean? He doesn't really understand expressions like that sometimes, and then he said something like, I don't even have boots on, and he took it very literally, as children that kind of do, and she got very frustrated and kind of upset, and I felt defensive of him, but I didn't say anything. And then later on, we were packing up to go, and I was helping her in the kitchen, and she said something to me, and I just reacted very badly. It's just hard to talk about, sorry. She asked me, kind of started off almost innocent question, so what's Ryan's plan for the fall with school? And I said, well, he's going to be going to the high school, and it's crazy thinking of a kid in high school. I said, we've already got things set up for him. He has an IEP, and he has a special ed plan there. He'll be attending some regular classes and some, more individualized attention, and he'll have a paraprofessional with him. And I told her all that, and she goes, well, that's great. She said, it just really seems that you guys just can't get a handle on things, makes me feel bad. And she said, sometimes you just gotta wonder. And I said, wonder about what? And she said, well, you did have him a little later on. And I said, well, yeah, I had him when I was 34, and I had my other daughter when I was 37. It's maybe not a spring chicken, but I'm not the only one who's done it. And, I got a little defensive and just said, well, I had him when we were financially and emotionally ready. And she said, do you think this has anything to do with your, and she wouldn't say it. And I said, what do you mean? I said, the birth, and she goes, no, not that. And I'm trying to figure out what the hell she's talking about. And then she says, that thing you had when you were younger. And all of a sudden I realized she's talking about the abortion. Before we got married, we got pregnant, and we were 22 and not ready to become parents. And I did get an abortion, and I didn't even know she knew about it. My husband must have told her. Not necessarily thrilled or upset either way about it. Neutral. I don't, well, at least not until now, haven't had bad feelings about it. And when she said that, I just had this look of shock on my face, and she said, well, science is all over the place these days. And she immediately just starts babbling, just going on and on. And I'm just sitting there stunned, just looking stunned. And she said, well, I'm not trying to say you're a bad mother, I'm not trying to talk down your choices, but sometimes you gotta wonder about these things, whether those choices you make kind of affect the future. And I was about an inch from telling her to, but I basically said, well, I do the best I can with what I have, and I think that's all you can really expect. And I haven't spoken with her in a week or two, which is kind of unusual. We usually talk once a week at least, so I don't know what she's feeling, but I know how I'm feeling, and it's not good.
Wow, so you've given me a lot of great information. So first off, it sounds like you're an extremely devoted mother. You're 100% invested in making sure that your child is getting the appropriate services and making sure that he has a shot in a great education. So I certainly commend you for that, because I've definitely worked with other clients who've been in very similar positions in which they're sort of fighting to make sure that their children are able to have the same resources and access to education as every other child. So I certainly commend you for that, and I can imagine that for your mother-in-law to make the comments that she made and imply the things that she implied and that you obviously picked up on, that must have been really devastating to hear. And it's never easy when we're feeling when we're already in a difficult position as it is, as that you've described with your son, but to have somebody else who really doesn't completely understand, making their own judgments and assumptions, that must be really difficult.
Yeah, it is.
How did it feel when you you definitely gave me a lot of information and gave a very thorough description of sort of like of that encounter. But how did you feel after, like when you went home that night, or when you left the area that your mother-in-law was in? How did you feel from that point on? Like,
well, I got in the car. My daughter and son and my husband were all there, so I just kind of was very quiet when I left. My husband kept asking me what was wrong, and he can get defensive about her sometimes, so I didn't really want to say anything to him. I didn't sleep too well that night. I've been pretty upset about it off and on since. I feel, to be honest, pissed, really angry. I'm not one to get mad easily at all, but I don't understand why she thought she had the right to say something like that. To bring up something, I mean, it's not like we've ever talked about my procedure. It's not like it's any of her business what we did when we were, 10 years ago, over 15 years ago. And to imply that caused Ryan's problems, I mean, I hate to say it, but now I'm thinking about it, now I'm thinking about, well, is she right? Did that damage me in some way? I mean, my daughter's cognitive, she's, neurotypical and functions normally, and she's quite bright actually, and very gifted, and then the comment about my age, I mean, she was one of the ones when we were younger who said, don't have kids too young, don't make the mistake I did and have kids when you're, at that age, and that certainly wasn't what factored into the abortion, but it makes me doubly angry because I was too young then, but I'm too old now. It makes me feel like I can't do anything right. Like, what's going to be enough? So I'm just pissed and mad. And feeling potentially guilty,
Absolutely. And you were saying that you had trouble sleeping that night. Did you feel like the thoughts of what she was saying you were having intrusive thoughts about what she was saying?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's very, very typical. When someone makes a comment like that, you can't help but kind of, make it sort of like a reality, like almost kind of make it a reality. Like it sort of makes you look back and think, wait, was there something that I did do wrong? And that can be devastating, because here you are already in a very challenging position, and now
I kept having these like irrational thoughts too. I lay there in bed, I was on my cell phone, and I started like 3 or 4 drafts of emails to her that I didn't send. I was so mad. I just kept writing out these emails and trying to make each one sound a little less nasty, a little less nasty, and a little less nasty. But I just felt like I had to say something. Like I couldn't just let it go by. I'm not one for like conflict. I mean, she and I don't have a bad relationship. I wouldn't say it's fantastic, but
civil.
Very, yeah, very. She's known to kind of say things, you know what I mean? But this just seemed even out of character for her, I mean, it's one thing between, wow, the kids are up a little past their bedtime tonight, and your son has autism because he had an abortion. I mean, that's a big leap to take, and that just set me so far off, and I was just thinking, I've got to say something to her, and I just surprised myself, because I looked back, a couple days later on some of the emails I almost sent, and some of the stuff I said was just angry.
But you didn't send it?
No, I didn't.
Did it make you feel better writing out those emails?
Not while I was doing it. I kind of felt powerless. I kind of felt like maybe I'm not going to be able to send it, and maybe I'll never be able to say anything. But afterwards, the next day I did feel better. I went and I looked back at them. I did feel better, yeah.
And things that you were saying in those emails, you don't have to go into specifics about exactly what was said, but did you feel as though you were defending yourself in the emails?
Good question. Yes and no. Yeah, I think it was. I feel like I was telling her that I don't have to explain myself to her, and that my choices are my choices, and that there's nothing wrong with me, and that to imply that my decisions years ago make me a bad parent now, or that decisions that have no effect on, I don't know, I'm kind of struggling through this. I'm like thinking about maybe I should just look at the emails and just...
Go ahead, take your time.
You did remember we closed at 6 today, right?
Make sure you hopefully remind me.
If you're sleeping, I'll wait.
Yeah, so looking back at it, I can kind of see, like, I was basically like saying, you know, yeah, defending my decision years ago, but I think I was also saying some things towards her about how I feel about her and kind of her attitude towards, you know, us as parents, especially me. I did say something to the effect of, you know, you're a great grandmother to your grandchildren, but I'm their mother, and I'm the only one that can make those kind of decisions as to how to help them. And to be told with no solicitation, you know, that this is where my child has a problem that I put every ounce of my life into helping him with, is my fault somehow, is just awful. And I do feel like in that draft I like confronted her, you know, many of the drafts. But some of them are really angry, some of them are more productive, I feel like, in terms of getting my thoughts out. But yeah.
So I think that, I mean, right there is an excellent step, and I think that it's very commendable that, you know, you didn't send the email, because I think, you know, by sending an email with words that, you know, you're kind of saying when you're kind of caught up in the moment, you're feeling really frustrated and angry, that can result in kind of negative repercussions. It can turn into, you know, it could, like, you know, you were saying how your husband sort of like, not necessarily sides with your mother-in-law or anything like that, but he sort of kind of, you know, like they're sort of
smooth it over.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So you know, it definitely sounds like if you had sent that email, it might have created some friction, and you know, it could have turned into a power struggle between the two of you, and nothing probably would have gotten resolved. I mean, perhaps at some point, you know, she might have apologized in the email, or she might have replied with some really negative backlash, or maybe said even more hurtful things. So bottom line, I think that the fact that you were able to sort of get all of your emotions out, which is very healthy, and very therapeutic, but not send it is an extremely
yeah, I mean, I think
great
that felt
step.
really good for me, but I think what I worry about now is like how am I gonna, because I'm still angry. It's been 2 weeks almost.
And you're
It's
still
been 10
feeling,
days.
and from what I'm hearing is that even though you were defending yourself in this email, and you were saying, like, you know what, I do the best I can.
If you're as old as I am, you get freezing.
And when
Get out of that seat, I'll sit there. But you know,
and from what you were, so from what it sounds like, from what you were saying, you know, in the email, you were defending yourself, and you were saying, you know what, like, I made these choices that were best for me, and I do the best I can as a mother. But at the same time, I'm also hearing that you're still sort of internalizing what she said about your parenting skills, and it sounds like you might be believing a little bit yourself.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I think I am believing it. You know, it's hard because I've always considered myself to be a really good mom. You know, I of course, all moms, but do you have kids?
I do.
So you know, I mean, we're always kind of hard on ourselves and criticizing and, you know, wondering if we're doing the best thing. But at the same time, my husband's great. He's so supportive, and he always makes sure to let me know, you know, that he's so grateful that I fight so hard for Ryan to have access to everything he needs to have access to at school, and, you know, that I give Lily plenty of attention to make sure, you know, she's not feeling like left out of the bunch, you know, because we do spend a lot of time and energy on, you know, getting Ryan the help he needs, and I try to have my girl time with my daughter. I try to do everything I can, so, you know, and I always have doubts, but hearing this, and then with some of the judgmental shit the moms in my autism group have said, I mean, recently, one of them said something about, you know, she's trying all sorts of, like, all natural supplements and stuff, like glutamine and all these different, like, kind of homeopathic treatments, and I'm not a big fan of that. I just, people want to do it, that's great. We did try some of that with Ryan, it didn't really have much of an effect. But I keep my mouth shut, you know, I don't say things. And, you know, Ryan's on a medication right now, which, you know, kind of helps even out his moods a little bit, it's a mood stabilizer. And this mom, who's the most, you know, vocal about the whole, you know, natural thing, just kind of started almost shouting me down in the group and saying like, well, you know, I think people who just go to try to, you know, trying to medicate their kids before they try anything else. And I had said a few times, you know, that we tried, but we didn't try for very long to use different approaches. We just found the medication to be really effective. And she went on this whole rant, and, you know, she looked at me a couple times, and I couldn't tell if she was like trying to give me that signal of, oh, I'm not talking about you, or trying to judge me. I couldn't really tell, but either way, I felt like it was misplaced, because there's other moms in the group who, you know, whose children are on medication too.
But you felt sort of, it was personal, you felt singled out a bit?
I did, yeah. I mean, she's not someone I'm super close with, but it just felt really, really hard to be judged, you know, and I did feel like she was judging me personally. I don't know, I just got the sense that, you know, because I'm pretty open about the fact that I've tried different medications with Ryan and had different side effects, and there are side effects with this one, and I've shared that, and I've shared some of the side effects with other moms in the group, so I felt like maybe that was why she had looked at me and why she was saying that.
You know, and it's very like I said in the beginning of our session, you know, I've definitely worked with parents with you know, children with autism, and there's definitely like so many different remedies out there, medications, different like you know, different remedies, like more like therapeutic remedies that don't involve medication. And I think, you know, it's very common, I think, for parents to get caught up in what works for them.
Yeah.
And you know, and sometimes they might, you know, be set on the idea that, you know, this way is the best way because it works for them, sort of not really realizing that different things are going to work for different kids. So,
yeah.
So I can imagine, I mean, that must have been really, really difficult for you to hear. You know,
Yeah.
you must have felt really frustrated and maybe even felt a little bit defensive, you know, felt like you kind of wanted to defend yourself. And what was your response in that scenario? Whether it was a verbal response or sort of like a more internalized response?
I left group. I mean, I didn't leave the instant she was stopped talking or anything, but group usually meets for about 2 hours, and I left, you know, I left probably about an hour in. You know, we had a quick little break, you know, to grab snacks and coffee, and you know, I just I did the Irish goodbye, you know, I just got out of there and left, didn't really say anything to anyone, and I left. I was so mad, and I was afraid that if I stayed and they could see the expression on my face, that it would be, you know, that people would know how I was feeling, and, you know, I don't like to act out, you know, I don't like to let people know unless I like to think about what I say before I say it.
It's
you know?
very commendable, because that's something that many people struggle with. So that is definitely great. So now, it sounds like, you know, you definitely might be in a position right now. I mean, it's a very sensitive subject in your life, you know, as we touched upon earlier. You know, you're very invested right now in making sure that your son gets everything that he needs. It sounds like you have, you know, a relatively positive relationship with your husband. He's very supportive, but you also mentioned how he doesn't really like conflict. So do you feel as though that kind of inhibits you from being able to talk to him about these things? Or do you feel like you have a pretty open relationship about that sort of thing?
Well, I don't think he'd be upset with me if I came to him with this stuff. I mean, it's not like... Yeah, I mean, do you think maybe I should share it with him, how I'm feeling, or...?
I mean, if you feel like, you know, that's something that's going to benefit you,
Yeah, I mean, I probably would, because as of now, you know, I didn't say anything to the other moms. Actually, I did talk to one of them. I did talk to a close friend of mine in the group, and she kind of gave me the old eye roll, you know, it's like, oh, you know her type of thing. So kind of even just, we didn't talk about it much, but just her reassuring me that it's just this other woman being a complete know-it-all. You know, so I felt good about that. But I feel like, you know, I don't like to burden my husband with a lot. I don't feel like I want him to worry about things, you know, and he doesn't like it when people complain a lot. He kind of is early in our marriage, you know, I would tell him little things about my day, and you know, just like little random problems, so I got stuck in traffic, whatever, and and I wouldn't say it in a bad mood, but I would say it kind of like, you know, just a little thing, and then over time he would get really frustrated with me, because he's like, well, you're being negative, and no one in my life would ever call me a negative person, so it always kind of hurt to feel that way, and eventually over time I just got used to not sharing those little things with him anymore. So now, you know, we definitely talk, we have good communication, but I don't really say when I'm feeling extremely unhappy with something, unless it's an emergency, you know, and this isn't an emergency, but at the same time it's affecting my relationship with his mom, you know. I avoided her call this week. She did call me, but I didn't answer, and that's very unusual, so, you know, eventually I'm gonna see her again soon, and, you know.
Yeah, so it sounds like what I'm hearing is that while your husband is, you know, very supportive of everything that's going on in your life, that, you know, there's still sort of on your part this kind of fear that you really letting him in to a lot of your like inner struggles about, you know, these interactions that you've been having like with other people in regards to your sons, you know, like programming at school and just life, you know, life in general. You know, it definitely sounds like your husband might just want kind of everything to just be sort of like calm and you know, and like I said, from what I'm hearing from you, he's very invested in, you know, providing for your son as well, but it sounds like it's easier on him when you're sort of
the one handling it.
Yeah, like in leading him, you know. So does your husband work?
Yeah. He's a foreman, construction supervisor, so he works a lot, does a lot of physical labor, so you know, I try to kind of handle the mom end of things. I work too, but not full time, and I don't know.
Can you think of a time in which someone made you feel, and this could be like in the last few years, it could be recently, someone made you feel kind of gave you a sense of confidence in how you're sort of you know, dealing with everything, when someone really kind of commended you or made you feel very good about yourself?
Well, I mean, my husband generally does. You know, he's always telling me what a good mom I am and a good wife and how lucky he is to have me. That's great. But as far as like specific to, you know, parenting a child with autism, you know, I think sometimes my husband doesn't think about that aspect, but, you know, he just thinks our kids, you know, and he doesn't really think about how different it is for us as parents to have to be concerned with things that our parents don't, you know. Most parents send their kids to school, but one of the moms, like the mom that I'm close with, the one I told about how annoyed I was about the comments, her name's Kelly, and we talked, and she recently has made me feel really better about things. She is able to kind of make things humorous. Like, when I told her, you know, how annoyed I was about the other woman's comment, she kind of was like, oh, well, you know her, and she made like a little face, like kind of like a, you know, making fun of her or whatever. She said, and she made a comment about you could do, you know, blah, 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 X, Y, Z, you could be sending them to like private school, would never be good enough for her. You know, so she kind of made a comment like it was her fault, you know, not mine, and I don't have anything to worry about. And she said, you know, I know how hard you work, and she said, I think you work harder than any of us here sometimes, so I think, you know, you don't have anything to worry about.
And how did that make you feel, hearing that?
Good.
That made you feel good?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it just needs to be recognized, you know, and I felt a lot better after she said that. I wasn't any less irritated by what the other woman said, but I was able to kind of think of it as like, oh, this isn't my problem, it's hers, you know?
Right. Well, no, and from what you're telling me, and I think that this kind of applies to human nature, we all like sort of validation that we're doing a good job in what we're doing. We all love compliments, we all love, you know, a pat on the back, but realistically, we all know that obviously that's not always going to happen when we want it, and that's frequently as we want it. And I think what I hear often, you know, about parents and other people in your situation is that, you know, I always hear the bad things. It's like I only hear what I'm doing wrong, and I don't hear what I'm doing right. Because I think that people are always, you know, a lot of people are much more prone to mention the negatives and not the positives, and that's something that I think that we all face.
I totally agree. That's like really frustrating for me because I'm a really positive person in general, and I'm always making people feel good about what they're doing. You know, I'm like that with both my kids, and I'm like that with my husband. I'm always, you know, I mean, obviously you have your little negative things here and there, but
Right.
you know, I love to tell people that I love them. You know, I love people to know how proud I am and how happy I am with the things they're doing in life. I guess I feel like maybe not everyone's like that, not everyone thinks like me, you know, and I don't expect everyone to be, you know, as open with their compliments and feelings, but it's hard sometimes knowing I am the way I am and that I don't always get that.
And you
in
don't get
return.
it reciprocated.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's a really, I mean, that statement is actually really kind of spot on to sort of like the direction that I want to go in terms of helping you with this, because what it sounds like is, you know, you are in a challenging situation, which you really, and I'm sure you had to kind of sacrifice a lot to sort of get Ryan to a good place, which I'm sure he's in right now. And, you know, it sounds as though, and I think it's actually very, I mean, commendable and noble of you to sort of, despite all of these challenges that you're facing, you're still able to kind of promote a sense of positivity and give people, you know, positive reinforcement, like compliments. I mean, you're able to point out, hey, like, I think that you're doing a great job with your child, etc. Like, you really seem to see the good in people, which is great, because I think a lot of times, you know, I think it can be hard for a lot of parents who are, you know, struggling with having a child with a disability. I think it's hard for them to be happy for other people, and it sounds like you have that quality in which you're able to feel happy for other people, which, you know, given a challenging situation is very, it's great. So yeah, let's maybe talk a little bit about sort of the feeling that you had when you were given sort of some reassurance, a compliment in regards to how well you're doing with Ryan, and let's compare that to how you felt when you know, back to when, like, the woman in the support group made that comment, and when your mother-in-law made that comment. Now you were saying that when your mother-in-law made that comment, you were thinking about it on the drive home, you kind of had trouble sleeping, you did write that email, sort of like venting, but you didn't send it, which, as we said, was great. Now, we touched a little bit upon how you felt when you got the compliment or the reassurance, and you said it felt good. What did that day look like for you? Like, from like that point on during the day, like what in terms of like your activities and maybe how you felt, how it affected things?
That night, support group meets like in the evening, and that night I went home and, you know, had a glass of wine, and Ryan was still up and my daughter was in bed, and you know, my husband and I sat and talked, and we ended up you know, watching a couple episodes of a TV show we're kind of obsessed with right now, and you know, we had some good time together, which is nice. We actually are able to do that kind of a lot, which I feel like not a lot of families do, and then I found myself, you know, kind of like looking forward to the next day a little bit, even though we had an IEP meeting, you know, and I had to take Ryan to therapy. I felt pretty confident, I guess. I felt on top of things. I felt okay with taking a break for myself that night, and I felt good about the immediate future.
Okay. Yeah, and in terms of our kind of comparing and contrasting, so based on what you're telling me, you know, you gave some great examples of the sense of confidence that you felt after, you know, you were commended for what a great job you're doing with your son. Now, based on how you felt, you know, after your mother-in-law, you know, made those comments, did you feel as though you didn't want to kind of carry on with what you were doing? Did you feel like that sense of giving up, almost?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about giving up, but I felt pretty defeated in that situation. Like, you know, on the way home from the drive, it was kind of a long drive, it's like an hour away, and I didn't want to talk at all. I just kind of closed my eyes and tried to pretend just tried to kind of zone out, and yeah, I mean, I felt definitely defeated by her words, because no, I felt defeated, I felt pissed, angry. I feel like angry would be the biggest thing I would feel towards that, and then maybe angry at myself too, because or even angry for questioning myself, because I know that what she said is not true, you know, and even if it were, I guess I don't know how I'd feel if it were, but for her giving me that extra worry, you know, she didn't need to do that.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've thought of it myself before, but I let that thought go many years ago, you know, and so to have that all brought up again, I just feel like she has no idea what a huge burden she placed on me.
Absolutely. And no, it's important for me to hear that, you know, you did feel this way years ago, but you were able to kind of overcome it. What made you overcome that initial feeling that, oh, maybe this is my fault? What steps did you take to get over that?
Well, that was something I did share with my husband a lot about. I told him, you know, we had a few long nights right after Ryan got diagnosed, and, you know, I did talk to him and ask him if he thought it was my fault. And, you know, kind of without saying you're crazy, he said you're crazy. You know, he said there's no way, you know, that those things would affect it. You know, he said, I'm glad we waited to have kids. I'm glad that we were able to save up money and take time, and I think you've done everything right. I think you're doing everything right. And that helped. Didn't make it completely go away, but, you know, I did a little bit of research, and, you know, I realized there's no link between, you know, my procedure and having children with autism. I couldn't find anything to substantiate that. And even with the advanced maternal age being an issue, I mean, I was really, that's with my daughter, you know, I was 37 when I had her. But with Ryan, I mean, I was in the normal range, so I just kind of had to think to myself, you know what, I can't beat myself up for something that I don't know. I eventually had to just come to terms with it, doing a little bit of research, and then I did go to therapy at that time too, actually. I can't believe I didn't even think of that. Just for a short time. It was, you know, it was family therapy with Ryan, but it was actually a little more focused on how I was coping, you know, and that really helped. You know, I learned, you know, ways to kind of celebrate the good that I've done instead of dwelling on what could have been and what I might have done wrong or what might have happened, you know, the what if.
Absolutely. No, and it sounds like you, I mean, have certainly come a long way. Like you said, you know, you were, you know, those thoughts did come up in which you felt like maybe it was something that I did, but then it sounds like you took the initiative to kind of do the research and, you know, talk to other people, confide in other people, and you were able to kind of validate to yourself that, you know what, this isn't my fault, and, you know, maybe if I did have a child when I was 22, you know, that might have been like what you were saying about your mother-in-law. She was saying that she suggested that you wait. You know, there's that thought of if you did decide to have a child and at a time in which you were financially unstable, that you know, might have had its negative repercussions as well. So, you know, it's very important for you to share that with me. It sounds like you're very aware. Now, what does your regular day look like? Do you wake up in the morning and do you, and you know, let's say for example that, because I'm sure that obviously taking care of Ryan is a relatively round-the-clock job.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty high functioning. I think it's more, the help he needs is more classroom.
Exactly.
And in terms of, you know, I do a lot for him. But he actually manages his symptoms really well. I think he's more, in unfamiliar situations really throw him. So we have a pretty solid routine in the morning. And yeah.
And I'm sure that like his level of functioning right now has to do a lot with you know, sort of the way in which you raised him and the steps you took to make sure that he was receiving the best treatment and the best services. So I think that that is an important thing for you to recognize, is that he's able to achieve certain things that might not have been possible if you didn't take the, if you didn't
that's true?
I mean, I think that the question is, do you think that's true?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people that have less resources, you know, than we do, and not even just financially, but emotionally and in a lot of different ways. And I feel like if I feel like without, you know, Ryan having both parents in his life to the degree that he does, and them working together, you know, I feel like the amount that we care for him and the amount that we fight for him, I don't think every kid gets that. And you know, I think that his outcome probably does have a lot to do with the work that we've put in. I mean, he's a brilliant kid on his own, you know, he really just struggles a lot socially, but I think that he does have a pretty good head on his shoulders, and I feel like, you know, at least we're part of that, if not, you know, all of it.
Yeah, I know, and that's a very, I mean, I know that I sort of kind of prompted that discussion a little bit, but it sounds like you know, based on like the way that you're telling me and kind of like your mannerisms and your body language, you are sort of saying to me that you feel that way about yourself. You feel as though, it's great. So I think that what I'll say is, I mean, it sounds like you know, are very kind of aware, very self-aware of, you know, the fact that you might have these encounters with family members or, you know, acquaintances and support groups that might trigger these thoughts of like, okay, what am I doing wrong, or, you know, and you feeling really down, and question, you know, what you've done with your son, in terms of getting him the services he needs and getting him to a really great place, a really great functional place. You know, it sounds like you have the capacity to kind of just keep reminding yourself that, you know, even though these negative encounters are going to take place, if you can just think back to sort of what you just told me, stay focused on those thoughts of how, listen, like you know, the things that I did are the reason why he's doing so well. So I would say for our next session, if you're interested in coming back, if you would maybe want to just like keep a journal maybe of, you know, maybe sort of keep kind of a log almost of encounters that kind of trigger sort of these thoughts. So for example, if the next time you go to a support group and somebody says something that kind of, you know, makes you feel a certain way, I would write that down and then write down how you felt about it. And then I would even say, do the same thing for the encounters that are really positive.
Feel good.
Yeah, and then write down those thoughts and those feelings that, you know, resulted from that as well.
Good idea. I think I could do that.
Okay, that's great. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank
We'll see you next time.